Guys, today we are going to talk about doing real estate, private lending, a lot of different real estate type of transactions inside of an IRA. How can we do that? We're going to talk about 401ks. We're going to talk about any kind of retirement account and how to move that over into an IRA or how to operate it out of an IRA and possibly a Roth as well. We're going to talk about all these things today with Christina Babineaux. How's it going today, Christina?
Oh, it's going really well. Thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
So excited to talk to you. I haven't had an IRA conversation in a long time, so this is going to be really informative for me. So I'm excited to really kind of dig into this. But I'd love for you to just kind of share kind of like maybe the mission or the background of IRA Innovations. You guys are located here in Birmingham. You have another office in Nashville, I think it is, just south of Nashville. So I'd love for you to just kind of tell me about IRA Innovations in general.
So we've been in business for 21 years now. We originated in 2003. Our original founder was Bill Goulis, and unfortunately he passed away in early 2021. But his partner, Mike Todd, who is in Nashville, acquired the company and proceeded to go forward. So we kind of look at ourselves as a community bank, the IRA space. We're not the biggest in the space, but we're not the smallest either. So we service about almost $1 billion in assets and have over 4,000 clients. And so we are excited about the fact that when you call us, you don't get a 1-800 number. There's no option to choose from. You'll always get a live person. You're always going to have that individual personal connection with a sales rep here. And our turn time is faster. So we can normally turn a deal around in 24 to 48 hours. So that's how we separate ourselves from the big guy.
And I want to talk about deals because I've been involved with self-directed IRAs for a long time. I know a lot of people in the space that have been. So definitely want to talk about deals. But you said something interesting. You said you act as like a community bank. What do you just mean? Just the personal touch? What do you mean by that? Okay.
So that's just the personal touch. So some of our competitors, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, of course, because we're all in this together. And some of them are just grown so much that it's taking them 2 weeks to turn a deal where we can get it done pretty fast. Okay. So most of the time, the lag that we have comes from the brokerage firms. When we're trying to move money from a brokerage firm to your IRA here, and that takes typically about 7 to 10 business days. And that's always going to be on the brokerage firm side. It's never going to be us. So once we have money in-house, it typically takes us 24 to 48 hours to flip it.
Gotcha.
Unless it's a real estate deal, and sometimes they just take a little longer because there's real estate attorneys involved in it and title companies.
For sure. Let's go from the beginning here because I think I know a lot, but I just want to make sure. I want to check with an expert. So let's start from the very beginning. Let's just talk about IRAs in general. So IRAs, and you guys handle just regular IRAs, Roth IRAs, self-directed IRAs, everything, or do you specialize in one particular thing? And can you kind of distinguish between?
Sure. So we do it all. We do solo 401ks only, not an actual employer plan. Okay. So we also can do the SEP plan, the self-employed plan. Okay. We can do HSAs, Coverdales, savings accounts, as well as the traditionals and the Roths.
Gotcha.
We can do it all.
So let's break all these down, and especially like the health savings accounts. Like I know that's kind of like a big rage. A lot of friends of mine are using those now. Let's break all this down, if you don't mind. Let's take them one at a time and tell us what they are and maybe the benefits of having them.
Sure. So your traditional. The great part about it is it doesn't have income limits affiliated with it for contributions. Okay. So it's going to be.
Okay. So hold on, slow down. So we've got an individual IRA, no income limits.
Not for traditionals.
Okay.
Now that doesn't necessarily mean you get the tax deduction because there are limits on that. Okay. So you have to meet the income threshold in order to get the tax deduction on your taxes. Okay. But they don't say you can't put it in. It's just not tax deductible. So you can put the $7,000 in annually. Okay, so hold on. So we're just talk to me like I don't know anything. We got to
go back to the basics. So because I didn't even know it was $7,000 anymore. So because that's obviously going up. So it doesn't matter what income I make, I can contribute to an IRA.
Yes.
And an IRA is
only a traditional.
And when you mean only a traditional versus what?
So a traditional is pre-tax. So that's coming out of your paycheck. Okay. Or you're taking the tax deduction on your tax returns. Okay.
So pre-tax means it's not a Roth.
Nope.
It's so when I draw that money out when I'm is it 59 and a half still when I'm of age, whatever it is, and I start getting distributions from my IRA, I'm gonna have to pay taxes on that money.
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Unless it's the Roth.
Got you.
So if you have a Roth, that's post-tax, and so the only restrictions on that would be the 5-year hold. So you're required when you convert to a Roth or you start a Roth, you have to wait 5 years before you can pull from it, or else there's a penalty.
Okay, gotcha.
But as long as you're 59 and a half and then you start to pull from a Roth, then you're okay. There is no taxable contribution.
Got it. So traditional IRA, no income requirements, but I can contribute $7,000 up to $7,000 a year. And I do have to pay. I can't make that a Roth necessarily if I have a certain income.
No, you can always convert to a Roth.
Okay. Can I start it that way?
Okay, so a Roth has income limits. So
okay, that's what I was asking.
Yes. So if you exceed the income limits of a Roth, and that depends on whether or not you're single or you're married, and so if you exceed those income limits, then you cannot contribute to a Roth. But, however, there is a such thing called a backdoor Roth.
Okay.
And we get a lot of inquiries about that. Because there is no income limit on a traditional IRA, you can actually contribute the $7,000 to the traditional. And again, you're not taking the tax deduction on your taxes because you exceed the income limits. But then you can actually convert those funds to the Roth and then have a Roth in that manner.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it's called a backdoor Roth.
Okay. And is that something that's popular? Is that something people are using? Okay.
It's very common. We get a lot of phone calls, a lot of things, especially with our higher income earners. So they're always looking for options to get money into the accounts because, once you get to a certain age, it's kind of hard to get money in.
Gotcha. So let's say, and let's keep kind of going down the line. We got Roth, or we have an IRA, traditional IRA. We've got a Roth IRA, which means after-tax money is going in, right? That's all that means. And there are income requirements for that, but I can still contribute up to $7,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay. And then let's go down the line. So you mentioned solo 401ks. So that is, who would that be for?
So that's for a sole proprietor or a small company that doesn't want to use an actual 401k plan.
Okay.
And so what that provides is the benefit that you can do the employer match. So you as the employee, being your own employee, can match the contribution that your company makes. So it's a quicker way to get funds into a retirement account.
Okay. So just as a sole proprietor, I can basically just double what I'm able to put in there, essentially.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
So
depending on what your plan says.
So that's for an entrepreneur or a sole proprietor, it sounds like. Who else would use something like that? A solo?
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Sole proprietors and entrepreneurs are the only ones that are eligible to use those plans.
Got it.
So then that moves into your 1099 employees. So if you have 1099 income, you can actually open the SEP, so the self-employed plan. Self-employed plan says that you can contribute up to $70,000 of your net income.
Okay.
So I think the threshold is 25% of your modified gross adjusted income.
Got it. Okay.
Up to $70,000.
And these are all everything we've talked about so far. Well, let's just go ahead and do health because HSAs too, and then there's I think there's one more thing you mentioned.
Yeah, the Coverdell.
The Coverdell. Okay. So let's do HSAs.
So the HSA, that's the health savings account.
Okay.
So it just depends on what your income is in order to contribute to it.
Okay.
But the necessity is that a lot of times self-directed assets do not liquefy very easily. So we encourage people that if you know that you're going to need those funds in the near future or short-term future, you may not want to go the self-directed route. But if you're 25, 30 years old and you're not expecting to really use those funds till you probably hit of Medicaid age or Medicare age, then you're probably going to be okay. So just have to be really careful with the health savings account because you don't want to end up in something that you can't liquefy.
Sure. Who is a health savings account for? Like, why would I, and what are the stipulations of a HSA?
So that's a high health savings account plan. So you've got to qualify for it. So
Okay.
the plan that you have has to be, I don't know a whole lot of those.
Okay, so my whole thing, I'm trying to stump Christina. That's what this is. This is an interview. I'm trying to stump you. That's the whole purpose. I'm just kidding. It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know the back end. I just know how I work. So
Okay. All right. So we will. We're gonna find that answer out. Would Mike know that?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
So we're gonna travel, and we're gonna go talk to Mike, and we're gonna get to the bottom of some of this other stuff. Okay.
Yeah.
And not trying to stump you. I was just joking. But I do want to try to kind of get to the point of like, why would a real estate investor use IRA innovations? Because essentially, we're talking to people who are in real estate and who are investing in real estate. Most of the folks I know who are doing this, you mentioned it earlier, I think even before we started recording, these are folks who want to lend and they want to buy and hold real estate inside of an IRA.
Correct.
Okay, so let's maybe throw you up a softball, hopefully. Let's just say I've got a 401k from a W-2 employer. I've got a W-2 job and I have an employer and I've got a 401k. I'm doing the whole, they're matching, whatever. And I am actively employed at this company and I'm actively contributing to this 401k. What are my options with that 401k?
So it's either one or the other. Either the plan that you have with your current employer will allow in-service distributions to a qualified plan.
So what does that mean?
Okay, so
In-service distributions to a qualified plan.
So if you have a current employer plan that you're contributing to, and sometimes the way the plan is established, they will allow for the vested amount within your 401k to be transferred to an IRA, which would be a qualified plan. And that would be a non-taxable event.
Okay.
Because it's still within retirement dollars.
Okay.
But if your plan administrator originated that plan without those exceptions, then you don't have an option.
What is one or the other more common?
No, not really. We don't. It just depends on what your employer established in the very beginning, and sometimes they don't even think about the option of doing that later.
Because I don't know
it kind of comes up and sometimes gets changed because the owner wants to do it, and he's like, oh, well, I'm going to have to modify my plan in order to make this happen. But a lot of large companies don't want to do that either because of the fact that they're making a deal with the firm who is handling the 401k, and they don't want to let go of any of those funds within that, or else pricing may change or those types of things. So those are the restrictions that you're butting up against. It's not on us. It's just how your employer set that up.
Sure. And I don't know, and I've had these conversations with friends of mine, but I just haven't heard of any that allow it because of the reason you just said, is because they don't want to lose that business. They've set up some sort of agreement. So are you seeing a lot of that?
No, we don't see it very often. We just tell people that they have to call their plan administrator and ask the question.
And if they don't allow it, then what? Then what are my options?
So then you have the option to start a brand new one. You just don't have very much cash to get started with.
Start a brand new one.
Brand new IRA.
So I can't start a new this is my 401k that's with my job I have my job. I'm not quitting my job.
Right.
So I have no options.
401k. No. You can start an IRA.
No, but I'm just saying with that existing 401k, I have no options with that.
Nope.
Yeah.
You're very limited to, you're at the mercy of your employer at that point.
Now, let's say this is a job I no longer have. Now, what are my options with this 401k?
Now, that gets really easy. So then that just becomes a rollover to us.
But you have to roll it over.
You have to roll it over.
Otherwise, it just sits in.
It sits into whatever vehicle you left it in when you left your job. So if you'll have to call and roll that over into an IRA, because a 401k, a true 401k plan cannot be self-directed.
Correct.
Only the solo 401ks and the ones that have been changed over to IRAs. Now, that's still non-taxable because you're still in that same category of retirement dollars.
But I can turn it into self-directed. I can turn a 401k from a job I used to have, I can turn that into a self-directed IRA with no penalty.
Correct. So you have to think about it this way. The word self-directed is just a marketing term. It absolutely has no meaning. According to the IRS, it's either a 401k plan or an IRA. There is no such word as self-directed. It is sheerly marketing. Somebody wanted it to be great on a billboard and...
Can you self-direct a 401k?
You cannot, because that's always held by the employer, not the employee.
What if it's and even a solo 401k?
Now, solo 401k you can do all day long, and an employee can go get a solo 401k if their employer doesn't offer a 401k plan. So if you have an employer that doesn't offer any kind of retirement, then you can work with your employer to set that solo 401k up, and then your employer can actually still contribute to it, and you as the employee can as well. So that works too.
And I can direct that? I can self-direct that?
But you can never...
But I don't have to, do I have to label it as, I feel like what I hear you saying is there is no label. There is no self-directed label. They're all they all can IRAs. Be self-directed if you choose to do it.
Correct. So that's strictly just a marketing term. So the Raymond James and the Charles Schwabs of the world, their niche is just, I only want to do stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. I don't want to do anything else. And so that's how self-directed world came along, is that other people wanted to do things outside of the brokerage firm, and they called it self-directed. But the IRS actually doesn't tell you what you can do, only says what you can't do. And there's only two things you can't do, and that's collectibles and life insurance.
Within an IRA.
Yeah, with the exception of the 99.9% pure gold and silver. So those are the only things that the IRS says you can't do, but everything else is free game as long as you follow the rules.
You cannot do gold, silver? 99?
You can.
Oh,
you can do gold and silver with the 99.9% pure.
Got it.
You just can't do collectibles. So
got it.
Per se, like I want to buy a 1967 Mustang convertible. Well, to you that might be worth $150,000, and to the guy down the street might be worth $200,000. But nobody can put a true value on it because it's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it.
Sure.
So in terms, then
so is everything else.
Yeah, IRS says that's a collectible. Can't go there. So stamps, alcohol, anything that doesn't have a true value to it.
Got it. So I still want to try to distinguish between, okay, so we got the 401k where I'm an employee and I'm working at this job. If there's the designation is not there, I can't really do anything with that.
No.
However, if the designation is there, then I could, in theory, move that over and I can convert that to an IRA. So I can do that. But as far as so maybe if I have a 401k that's not with an employer, so whether it's I forgot what you called it, a SEP, or if it's a solo 401k, I have all these things. Can I self-direct that 401k?
Not yourself individually. You have to have a custodian. So what that means is that
for the 401k.
Well, there is no SEP for the 401k.
Okay, so I'm getting. Hold on, I'm getting all this. I'm getting to the custodian here in a second. I guess I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question. If I have a solo 401k, can I self-direct that?
Yes.
As a solo 401k.
Yes.
I can self-direct that.
Correct.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. But that is not coming from my employer because it's a solo it's for entrepreneurs. It's for business owners.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I think I'm with you. I mean, there's a lot to this.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of rules to the road. So
yeah,
we spend a lot of time educating. And so with that being said, our firm is educational purposes only. We don't have an investment to choose from. We don't have licenses or brokerage licenses or financial planner licenses. We direct everybody to a tax accountant or financial planner if those are things that you want or you want answers to. Because when you arrive at our firm, most people know exactly what they want. I don't have an investment to choose from. I don't have a money market or a mutual fund or anything of, I'm not going to hand you a pamphlet that says, here's your choices. You've got to bring it to me. And I can tell you how to do it within the IRA, but I cannot instruct you of what to invest in.
Gotcha. All right, so I've got an IRA now. If I have just a traditional IRA, can I make that a Roth?
You can if you're willing to pay the taxes on it.
So I have to pay the taxes on the whole thing.
Well, no, not necessarily. You can convert small amounts if you want over time, and you'll just pay the tax on whatever you converted at that time.
Does that just come out of the IRA?
No. So what happens is if you want to convert $10,000 from your traditional to your Roth, we will distribute $10,000 from that to your Roth. And so you will receive the 1099 and you have to pay taxes on the $10,000.
Got it. So I've got an IRA now. Okay. We're going to get into IRA world because I was curious about some 401k stuff. And by the way, if I do, just real quick on 401k to tie the bow. If I'm working a current job and I have a 401k, can I get a hold of that, even with a penalty? Can I get a hold of that money?
You can through your employer as long as they allow it. You can do.
But they could not allow it?
Yeah, I mean, they can not allow loans or in-service distributions, yeah. I wouldn't think they would. They wouldn't have any reason to hold your money hostage. So,
well, it's more money that's going into that brokerage.
Well, yeah, but it's still your money at the end of the day. So as long as you're vested, you can't take out anything that's not yours. So a lot of companies have vesting time frames. So if they say that that's 10 years, then you probably could take out what you put in. You just can't take out what they've matched.
Got it.
So you just have to pay taxes and the penalty on it when you take it out. Or you can do the loan if you choose to.
Right.
And you pay yourself back.
And then a 401k where maybe like an older 401k that's just sitting there. I can still get a hold of that money. I'm just paying a penalty on it.
No. Well, it depends on what you're wanting to do with it. If you're wanting to bring it over to the self-directed
No, I just want to liquidate it. I just want to take the money.
Then you're just going to take the penalty.
Which is what?
Pay the taxes. It depends on what tax bracket you're in.
Okay.
So there's a 10% penalty automatic on top.
Okay. Right.
No matter what. And then the taxes you pay on it's going to depend on the bracket that you lie in.
Okay, so I've got an IRA now. I want to invest in some real estate. Okay, I've got an IRA. Maybe I rolled over an old 401k into an IRA. Maybe it's just something I've been paying into for a while. Whatever it might be, I've got an IRA sitting here. Maybe I got $100,000 in it. I want to do something. I want to invest that on my terms. Okay, which I guess I would have to anyway. What would my other option even be with an IRA?
Well, you can still have the brokerage account. You can do the stocks and the bonds and the mutual funds, the brokered house. You can do CDs at a bank, or you can come to the self-directed world, and then you can do anything. So you can do real estate. You can do the private lending if you wanted to. We do a lot of people that do real estate syndications. We also work with a lot of private equity firms here in town that we service when they want to do capital calls and things like that. We'll open 100 accounts in a day just to service that.
Wow.
People buy gold, silver. It just depends on what you want to do. I even have people who own cattle and horses within their IRA, and everybody looks at us and goes, huh? So you mentioned earlier you're an education company. I mean, obviously you're servicing all these accounts, but you're not telling people or even directing people to this or this or this. It's whatever you want to do. Let's say I come to you, I got $100,000. What would you advise me to do? I want to self-direct this. The best advice we can give you is to do what you know.
Okay.
Do what you're familiar with. So if the real estate business is what you know or what you're willing to learn, then yes, go for it. But it's easier to stay in your realm of what you know instead of trying to jump outside the box and find something that's brand new.
Sure.
And that's typically why we see people that move to us, is because they want to do something that is near and dear to them, and they understand the inside workings of it, and then they can put that toward their own benefit. And so when we tell people to jump outside the box, we kind of get a little worried just because, are you doing your due diligence? Do you know exactly what you're doing, how you need to do it? So most people sleep a little better at night knowing that they're doing exactly what they're familiar with.
Do you have anyone? I know you're managing a lot of money here. Do you have anyone that's just I just don't know. I just don't know what to do. So it just sits there.
We do. You'd be fascinated with how many people will move it over here in the expectations that they have a deal coming, and then they don't ever do it because either they get afraid and they don't want to pull the trigger on it, or it just doesn't work out because they've lost track of time. So it happens. But unfortunately, we can't do anything other than wait for you to tell us what you're going to do.
For sure. And then when someone decides what they want to do, how does that process work? Like I just decide I just want to buy a piece of real estate and just hold a piece of real estate, and that's it.
Yeah, and that's fine. So it just depends on what you're doing. So the process is actually fairly simple. You open up a new account. We'll transfer the funds from wherever you currently have them or however you want to get them into the IRA here. Once that happens, if you're purchasing real estate, we work directly with the real estate attorneys and the title companies. We sign everything on behalf of the IRA because the IRA is actually an entity, not an individual. It's for the benefit of you, but it's still at the end of the day, it's an entity. So it's going to say IRA Innovations LLC as custodian for the benefit of Brian IRA. And then as long as everything goes smoothly and we appropriate the documents and make sure that they're titled correctly, then we'll send them to you to make sure that it's everything you wanted because you're the final approval. We're not checking numbers. We're not looking to make sure that you paid half the year's taxes and or the commission was supposed to be 3%, not 2%. We're not looking for any of that. We're looking for you to make sure that that's exactly what you wanted it to be, and then once that approval comes back to us, we will fund the deal. So we always make sure we do verbal confirmations with all our clients to avoid the wire fraud that's happening these days. And so we'll always make sure we call no matter what. And once that's done, typically by the time we get the documents from the title company, it's funded in 24 or 48 hours.
Gotcha. And just so everybody we're all on the same page here, why do you guys even exist? Like, why does there have to be somebody doing that on my behalf? Why can't I do it?
Because the wonderful IRS says you have to.
Okay.
So the IRS states you must have a custodian for an individual retirement plan to make sure that everything is in line with IRS guidelines.
So they let us do our taxes on our own, but they don't trust us enough with our retirement accounts.
Well, most of that is because your retirement account has to remain hands off.
Okay.
You're not allowed to touch it. So that's where disqualified people and disqualified transactions come into play.
Right.
So you yourself are actually disqualified from your own IRA plan.
Okay, what does that mean?
So you can't benefit from it personally until you retire.
Okay.
Or distribute it to yourself. So the best example I can use is I want the condo at the beach. And I've always dreamed of having the condo at the beach. I'm going to rent it for 50 weeks out of the year, and I'm going to stay in it for 2 weeks.
Can't do that?
Nope, can't do it. And that's because you're disqualified from yourself, from your own IRA. So the IRS states that anyone straight up or straight down your family tree are disqualified people. So your mom, your dad, you, your wife, your son, your daughter. Any of those people can't benefit from anything your IRA purchases. So nobody can go stay in that beach condo unless they're not a disqualified person. So anyone to the right or the left of your family tree, your sister, your brother, your aunt, uncle, mother-in-law, father-in-law, all those people can go stay in that condo except for the disqualified ones. And so that's the questions that we get asked a lot is, why can't I touch it? And I mean, even for our rehabbers that are purchasing real estate, they're not even supposed to go in and change a light bulb. If you're going in and
you can't loan money to yourself.
Well, you can't loan money to yourself and can't use it yourself. You're not even supposed to work on it yourself. Right. So if you're the rehabber and you're going in there building a porch or building a roof, then that's disqualified. You can pay a roofer to come do it. The IRA can pay the roofer to come do it. But you as an individual can't.
So if I were to buy a house inside of my IRA, I cannot work on that house?
Nope.
Ooh, interesting.
I know. Now, and a lot of the questions we get is, will the IRS ever know? Probably not. I mean, the chances are very slim. But the catch is it worth it?
Yeah.
Because the penalty is and can be 100% of your IRA distributed at the time of the prohibited transaction, plus a 10% fine, and can be taxed up to 100% of the total IRA. You don't want to do it.
Yeah, yeah, for
I
sure.
wouldn't do it.
Yeah, no, for sure. So that's interesting because I didn't know that, but I do know of a lot of people who are lending in using their self-directed IRA to lend, and they cannot lend on their own projects.
They cannot.
But they can lend to a friend's project.
And that friend can turn around and lend back to
Exactly.
you.
And I've seen that happen a ton.
Yeah.
So, and then it kind of explains like why it's happening. Well, this so-and-so is lending to me and I'm lending his. Why don't you just lend to each other? You can't do it because it's straight up and down. Well, it's you.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of people that will partner up. I'll help, I'll rehab your house, you rehab my house, and, we'll benefit in the middle. So, and that's fine as long as you yourself are not doing anything where your own property is concerned. And then we have a lot of people who will, I need an air conditioning unit in my property. Can you help me out? Can you lend me $6,000 for 6 months, with X amount of interest rate, and then I'll pay you back.
Right.
Okay, that's fine too. As long as it's not a prohibited transaction, we're okay with any of those scenarios.
What are some of the more successful investments that you've seen inside of an IRA?
Most of the time, the most successful turn out to be accidents. Gentleman contributed within his grandson's Coverdale $800. He wrote a contract and then turned around and did a lease-to-own contract for $100,000. And so then that paid for all of the college for his grandson. So
what's a Coverdale? I don't even know that we
college Coverdale savings account. So they're only allowed $2,000 a year contributions. They're kind of the government's never increased the limits of what you can contribute to the college savings account. It's just a different version of the 529 plan, where the 529 plan that you can do for college students, that's city and self-directed. You can't do anything but put into the state plan, I guess you could say. Where Coverdale, you can choose to do what you want with it.
So it's like a self-directed.
Yeah.
So
most people don't choose that route because you can't get very much in it. $2,000 a year is not very much.
So this person put, you said $800 in it, and then and turned around and did a lease. Look, what?
Did some kind of lease to option closing. So
like there's
lease owner sale option, I think is what it's called. So he leased it to somebody else as a lease to own, and then by the time the return came back, it was over $100,000.
Yeah. Let me ask you about this. What do you know about wholesaling inside of a self-directed IRA?
I do not. That would definitely be a Mike follow-up.
Okay. Well, let me present this scenario. I know of people who've done this, and then after I'm listening to you with this whole, you can't benefit thing. So I'm interested to know what you think about this. There are people I know who have barely anything in an IRA to start with, maybe $500. They turn around and put $500 as earnest money on a contract, on a purchase contract for a piece of real estate. They sell that contract to another investor, and they pay them a fee for that contract. That's wholesaling. You get paid a fee, and that fee goes back into the IRA. And that fee could be 5 figures, could be 6 figures.
Can.
So is there any kind of limitations you see with anything like that?
No. The only limitations that we ever see within the IRA is you just always have to be careful with the interest rates you charge because of usury laws. But
you want to explain that a little bit?
So usury laws come into play if you exceed the set interest rate for a loan.
Do we know what that is?
So it depends on what state you're in.
Right. Do we know what that is in Alabama?
State of Alabama, I believe, is prime plus 4%, which would put it right at 10. And so, but there's a way around that because you can always charge origination fees on the front side to gain whatever interest rate you're trying for. But you don't want to be what I call the check into cash lender, that the money lender you see on the side of the street, because if you're charging too high of interest, you can get into trouble.
How do they get away with it?
The check into cash, they're regulated by law now. They can only charge X amount of interest. which is why usury laws came into play.
What about credit card interest rates? What is it?
They don't apply.
They don't apply? Interesting. So I've done a lot of seller finance deals where the interest rate is a certain number, and I'm familiar with usury laws, and I may have fudged that a little bit now that I'm thinking about it. But that's something you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, well, we don't regulate that, though.
You don't regulate that?
No, the IRS says that the only regulation that we have to have is that there is a minimum interest rate that you must charge, not what the maximum is.
Interesting.
So we don't regulate what interest rate you put on the promissory note as long as it meets our minimum.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally up to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what state you live in. I don't know what state, that you're trying to run your rules through.
Sure.
That's totally up to you what you want to do.
Yeah, we're talking about Alabama here today, but I want to. So I asked you, what are some some successful investments that people have had, and you said it's kind of almost by accident. What about some things that you've seen people do that it's not your job to question them, it's your job to educate, but you've seen things just go completely awry? Do you have any examples of things that we should possibly steer clear of?
Typically what we see if you're gonna do things like that is people are trying to lend to their daughter with a different last name.
Oh, I'm not talking about illegal things.
Oh, okay.
Or I'm not talking about trying to skate around the rules.
Oh, the questionable
I'm talking
stuff.
about just stuff that it's just like that's a little, or even people that have structured real estate deals in a way that ended up not benefiting them.
I don't know that we see a whole lot of that. Typically, the things that go awry are the private placements.
I don't know what that is.
So private placement would be that you contributed capital to a private equity firm that was then investing in something else. Mm-hmm. So we have a lot of clients that invested 10, 15 years ago and still have not paid out.
Oh, yeah.
And may or may not pay out. You don't know. So typically when I see things go awry, that's typically the realm they go in. The real estate doesn't typically get anyone into trouble. The only thing that we've ever seen is people do take on debt within the IRA to purchase real estate. And if something happens to the market and they're not able to rent the property, then they don't have the income in the account to be able to pay the mortgage. So those are typically the things that we would see.
Then how would they pay the mortgage?
Well, you either have to do one or two things. Either you sell the property or you have to move money from another IRA over to your IRA.
But I couldn't pay the mortgage myself in my personal name out of my personal money?
That's a disqualified transaction.
And then what happens?
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Okay.
Then we get back into the IRS will distribute your IRA and tax you for all of it. So you don't want to go there. So we tell people when they purchase real estate, you always want to have a cushion because all the expenses and all the income will come in and out of the IRA.
Right.
So that means that all the taxes, insurance, any kind of property repairs or anything like that has to come from that IRA.
And all the rents go into the IRA. You don't collect the rents either. All the rent checks go.
Because everything's tax deferred.
Right.
And so everything's coming in and out of that IRA. The only option that you would have in the event that you got yourself into trouble and you did not have any type of liquidity or no options, so you exhausted, I don't have money anywhere else, I've exhausted my contribution limits for the year, you could ask a financial friend if they would be willing to pay it. And then when the money did come into the IRA, you can reimburse that financial friend. So that's an option.
Almost like a second loan. Or like
almost.
Almost a loan, basically.
Right.
Okay, interesting. So let's say we want to self-direct our IRA, which apparently we can do. We don't need any kind of special designation. All IRAs we can direct them. We just need to have a custodian.
As long as the firm allows it.
Okay, so we've got a custodian and we've got someone who's going to administer that transaction for us. And we want to loan money out of our IRA into someone else's deal, okay? Someone else's real estate deal. They're going to fix and flip it. They're going to pay us back with interest when they sell it. What happens if, because I know that this has happened, what happens if that deal goes awry? So I've lended money out of my IRA to someone who's doing a real estate deal. They mess something up, and now I have to take the property back, or my IRA has to take the property back. So have you seen those scenarios?
Yeah, so you have to foreclose in the name of the IRA. It's hopefully you're secured to be able to do that. So we have a lot of unsecured loans on the books. So, but if you are secured, then you just your foreclosure process looks exactly like if you were foreclosing yourself. You'll just foreclose in the name of the IRA instead of you, the individual. So that happens a lot, actually. And so we just take the property back, and then.
But the IRA owns the property.
Right. The IRA takes the property back, and then instead of it being a promissory note that's within your account, now you have an actual true real estate asset.
Right.
So it just converts it.
And the same thing, everything we just talked about earlier applies, which I've taken this asset back, or I now own, this IRA now owns this asset, which means I can't personally go and touch that thing to get it fixed up. But I can hire people to go get it fixed up if I want to liquidate it.
Yes.
I can hire people to go fix it up. I can hire a realtor to get it on the market, and we can go to a closing, and whatever happens, whether I got to pay to get it sold or whether I have proceeds, it's all going. Everything's coming from the IRA.
Correct.
Okay. Is there anything that's outside of lending, private lending out of an IRA, or just buying and holding an asset? Or buying and holding paper? I know a lot of people do that too. They'll buy and hold notes, real estate notes. Any other things that you can think of that people do with real estate inside of their IRA?
We have people that buy tax liens. That gets a little on the sticky side, but you can do it. As long as the IRA is paying the taxes, you can buy the tax liens. They're just held within the IRA. Right. We do the real estate syndications as well.
Okay, explain that for a second.
So a real estate syndication is just you're investing in a company that is then going to turn around and go purchase 30 or 40 houses in a community, and then
or apartments or whatever it might be,
or whatever that might be. Yeah, and then you're just investing in that company. And so if in the event that they have dividends or returns, then your IRA is getting the funds back. So. Right. That it just denotes what type of assets you have in your account. So you don't actually hold the real estate. The company you're invested in holds that real estate. So.
Let's say I want to be a syndicator. Okay, I want to be a real estate syndicator. I've got a lot of investors that might be interested in, we're going to buy an apartment complex. As this person who's going to be syndicating, I want to come to you. I want to say there is someone who has an account with you guys that wants to participate in this. Is this a conversation they're having with you, I'm having with you, we are having with you? How does that work? Because they don't know how to do it. They think they can do it. They want to do it, but they need help.
So a lot of times when we're working with those firms, they'll call us first because sometimes they want to be hands off and sometimes they want to be hands on. So it just kind of depends on the firm itself. So we work with a lot of equity firms that will call us with the applications already completed. So we actually never speak to the client. Applications are completed. They send them over to us. When the deal comes through, all right, Mr. IRA Innovations, here's all the subscription documents for every client that we've opened an account for. And the only contact we actually have with the client is the verbal phone call that says, hey, you're ready to fund, right? And then we have the hands-off clients that actually would just rather, okay, here's IRA Innovations' number, call and you get all the information. And then we walk them through the entire process and work with that syndication firm at the same time to obtain your subscription documents and your LLC agreements and all the things.
Got it.
Because we'll do everything for you if we can just get the paperwork and the contact information.
Got it.
Because we understand that those documents are difficult to read. You're not used to reading them. We fill them out really quickly just because we're used to it. And we will provide our internal documentation as well as their documentation. And we'll send it all to you to peruse. You don't have to do nothing.
Are there, and I'm just sitting here thinking as you're talking about different things, I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Is there any regulation coming down the pike? Is there anything any new laws in the state of Alabama that you're aware of over the past maybe 3 or 4 years, or that are possibly coming up that might affect our retirement accounts?
Not that I'm aware of. We had a scare probably about 5 years ago, where we kind of thought that they were going to limit the self-directed world, but then they kind of backed up on the regulation. So I don't see anything in the future. The only thing that affects our world that we see coming up is the BOI, the beneficial ownership information.
And we still don't know what's happening with that, do we?
Oh, well, they put it back on the deadline again.
Okay.
I think March 28th, I think it's the new deadline, because they suspended it at the beginning of the year. And
it's been in and out of court
it has
4 or 5 times.
So
with 4 or 5 different rulings.
They've brought it back. It's here again. Whether or not it'll be suspended, I'm not sure. But
how is that going to affect?
It affects us because we have checkbook IRAs. So a checkbook IRA, and this is completely off topic, but checkbook IRA is a LLC that is formed as the IRA is the member, and you, the individual, is the manager.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take the checkbook control. You go down to your local bank, you open a checking account in the name of the LLC that is owned by the IRA, and then you do whatever you would like to do, whether that open a brokered account or buy crypto or buy real estate flip, however you want to do, but you take control of who writes those checks and who you're writing them to.
Versus IRA innovations.
Yes. And so that affects our world. So
how does that affect your world? Because they're going to have to disclose who owns the entity?
It does, but see, the BOI is not set up to show a entity as a member, because the whole idea behind the beneficial ownership is to get to the individual who actually owns the company, to keep from the shell corps. I got a shell corp, a company that owns a company that owns a company. So the whole point is to get to the individual. Well, the individual at the end of the day is you, the individual, but yet your IRA owns it. So I've called the IRS 3 times to ask, and I've not gotten an answer of how it affects IRAs. They just tell us to put the true beneficiary of the IRA as the individual and to move forward. And I said, but at the end of the day, these are still owned by an IRA, not the individual, because you technically are just a beneficiary, not the owner.
Yeah.
And so
what are you going to do?
We fought it. We've advised our clients when they fill out the BOIs just to fill them out as if they owned them, because we don't have any other way to do it.
So you wouldn't advise them to fill it out as the IRA?
You can. The forms won't let you. So when you fill it out, when you put the entity, the IRA as an entity in those documents, then it wants to know who owns the IRA. Well, IRA Innovations is technically not the owner. We're custodians. And so technically our custodianship is for the 4,000 clients that we service, not me or Mike as the individual. So we're not going to give you our social security numbers to go on 4,000, BOIs. And so it's kind of gotten a little sticking point. But we've just advised everybody at the end of the day, you are the true beneficiary. And, we're going to report it to the IRS that you have an IRA. So.
Yeah. It's an interesting world with all this stuff, because, there's so many entities, corporations, whatever it might be, that are maybe feel like it's a violation of privacy.
It kind of makes me a little worried, the BOI does, just because of the fact that we don't ever want to get anybody in trouble with tax purposes. And, checkbook LLCs you don't fill out a tax return unless you get on to UBIT, the unrelated business tax, and so you don't have to actually file a tax return for anything that your IRA owns, because it's all tax deferred. The only expense with it is to hold on to the entity itself, because you have to pay the state, but you don't file the actual federal return.
Is there anything I'm forgetting? Is there anything that we haven't covered?
No.
Anything that like when you go and you do a lot of presentations, is there anything that we haven't covered here today that, we got to touch on this, Nothing?
The one thing I do like to tell my real estate investors is that depreciation. We get the depreciation question all the time. Because when you individually own it or you own it by your own LLC, then you're able to take that depreciation for real estate, and that doesn't happen within an IRA.
Interesting.
There is no such thing as depreciation within an IRA because everything's tax deferred. So you can't take the benefit of the tax deduction on the front side when you're pushing all your taxes to the back end.
And that's if you own the real estate inside of the IRA.
Correct. Yeah. So that's typically, always our house flippers, our real estate agents. Everybody's always looking for how can I depreciate something?
Sure. Got it.
And so we try to express that there is none.
Yeah.
And there's also no 1031 exchange within an IRA either. So
because everything's tax deferred.
Because everything's tax deferred. So those are the two sticking points that we always like to show. That's the reason why you want to do it within the IRA anyway, so you can avoid the capital gains taxes.
Got it. And it's deferred only until we take a distribution. Yeah. Okay.
Or tax-free if you're in the Roth.
If you're in the Roth. Got it. Christina, Babineaux, IRA Innovations. How can people get a hold of you guys?
You can always call us at 205-985-0860, or you can go to our website at www.irainnovations.com, and we're happy to call you back or just shoot us an email.
And if people just want education, they just want to know how to do this stuff, they can reach out to you guys?
Of course,
they've got
yeah.
questions.
Even if they're not with us, we're happy to discuss a deal, talk through it, suggest ideas of how you can go about doing something. So if you just have a thought or an idea, we're happy to talk it through just to see if we can make it work.
Awesome. Christina, thank you. Guys, hope you learned something today, because I know I have. I thought I knew a lot about this, and I know a little bit about it, but now I know a lot more thanks to Christina. Appreciate you, and appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you next time.